And good morning. Can you all hear me? Do we have
Yeah.
audio? Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Geez, you
yes,
guys are making me
yes.
nervous here. You're making me nervous. I'm trying to operate a couple of different streams here, but I think I got it all going. Well, like we do every single morning, I want to start something with some good vibes. Who has got something going positive in their world?
Morning.
Well, Warren, you got the mic, so why don't you give us something positive? What's going good in your world, man?
I'm excited to join the crew.
Yeah? All right. Well, we're
Uh,
excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm just trying to get used to this here, so I'm not technically advanced, so you got to give me some time.
No worries, no
Lauren,
worries. And
you're
we,
in both of
yeah,
our meetings right now.
Oh,
and I appreciate everybody making the switch here to Zoom this morning. Hopefully, there's not too many technical difficulties. Um, but who wants to share? Who's got something? We got anybody else that wants to share either something good going or a real estate question that you guys might have? Let's get this thing rocking. And if you're raising your hand and I don't see it, please let me know because I'm trying to understand these new controls. If we're shy this morning, we can jump right into my next line item on our inspection topics. Next thing that I had for us to talk about was septic systems. We haven't really dove too deep into this stuff. In a couple of the states that we operate in as a team, things are a little bit different. In Massachusetts, this is a requirement that you get a Title V inspection. In Connecticut, it's not a requirement. It's optional, obviously recommended. Anybody want to just kind of share maybe a septic story that you might have, something recent on a deal, something that you learned that you didn't realize regarding these septic inspections? Who's got to share? We do know how to unmute on Zoom, yes? I think the first thing that's coming to mind for me when it comes to these septic inspections is that it's not just a complete pass or fail, right? There are a lot of situations where you get some conditional stuff where maybe a piece of the system is not working at the ideal capacity that it needs to be. So I think sometimes people can get a little bit nervous that, oh my God, I'm going to need a full replacement. This is going to be a $10,000 job, and it ends up being a $1,000 fix. So anybody have any scenarios like that where, hey, this piece broke, we were able to fix it, we were able to save the deal? Anything like that coming to mind that you'd like to share?
I mean, what is it you want to know, Steve? Because obviously I do a ton of septic systems, so they're out here. So, like you just said, so Brian Pranka is the big one in this area that'll do the Title V inspection. So when
Yep,
you have a house that has it, that's where you start, right?
yep.
Now you get a
But
Title
I'm
V.
looking like, hey, you know what? We found out that there was a broken baffle, right? And the system wasn't working. We were nervous, thought it was going to be a full replacement. Turns out, this piece could be replaced for $500. Hey, we're doing a deal and it's just a leach field issue. And luckily for us, there was another area on the property we could just put a new leach field in. We didn't have to do an entire new system. So just trying to get into some specifics like that for people that don't understand the different little intricacies that happen with regards to a septic system.
So, like with my house personally, just a few years ago when I was selling, I had my Title V done and it failed because they do give you a failed and then you get a certificate of compliance after you do the one piece. The only thing that was wrong was there was a slight hole in my tank itself, which did end up being like an $1,800 fix. That's it. Now, if it's a leach field that is bad in it, that is a little bit pricier. That can go up there. But obviously, a whole new system is rare. I haven't had it where it needed a whole entire new system in quite some time. Thank God, because it's always been some little thing that it's not a problem to fix. Like the D box is cracked, or the tank has a little hole in it, or the leach field and it's going to leach out another way. Sometimes there's multiple leach fields out there and they can just close one off and just stop using that one. I've had that happen too.
I want to talk specifically about your situation. So in yours, you said the tank had a hole in it and it was leaking. So was this something they were able to go and patch the tank? Did you need to install an entire new tank?
Nope, they just patched it. So it was like a slight hole that was in, yeah, the tank, and they did go in and patch it is what was the recommended fix. Yep.
Cool. Who else has had an experience regarding the septic system? Hey, leach field, we had to move it. We had to, I don't know. You tell me. Amber, what do you got?
So I had a listing, it's been a little while, but house was listed on town website. Like I checked everything, 4-bedroom house, yada, yada, yada. Didn't really know where the septic system was or anything like that. Well, come to find out, we had the Title V done. The D-box was under the paved driveway. So that was fun. They had to actually dig out part of the paved driveway to get to the D-box. And the system was only for a 3-bedroom house. Now, my clients have owned this house for almost 40 years. They were being taxed on a 4-bedroom house. And it was only, so they could only sell it as a 3-bedroom house. So sometimes if you can do a little digging prior to listing, unfortunately, some of these towns don't even have anything on their septics. Like that's pretty much the job of the health department. But a lot of them don't have the system. They don't have the paperwork. They don't have the design. They have nothing. And you hope that the owner does, but unfortunately we didn't. And yeah, that was a fun one.
So this is a great topic, Amber, and a great share. You've been having your coffee the past few mornings because your shares have been awesome. So actually, we're going to do one of. How about that? In all seriousness, with these bedroom counts, so I want to understand your situation and make sure that I'm following along, right? So septic system fails, 4-bedroom house, current system is 3-bedroom, and so when it fails, now they're asking for an upgrade to a 4-bedroom system. Is that's the scenario that's happening with yours, correct? So that's where we can get into some trouble, where if we've added a bedroom or we've expanded the house, but we didn't expand the septic system, we got ourselves a problem.
So I don't know. Again, they've owned the house. They own the house for almost 40 years. They bought it as a 4-bedroom house. So when they purchased it, it was purchased as a 4-bedroom house. They made no additions. Whether there was additions at some point, I don't know. But it's always been listed, as far as they knew, as a 4-bedroom house. That's how they purchased it. The system actually passed. It's just that we had to open up the driveway to get to the D-box. And then after that, the problem was that now the system was only for 3-bedroom. So we had to make adjustments to the sale price because now it was listed as a 3-bedroom. So the comps didn't comp.
Gotcha. Yeah, it can get really, really, really hairy with these septic systems when you've got different sizes, older systems. Adam, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I buy houses with bad septic, so I can tell you anything you need to know, but just a couple situations. We did have a situation where we could fix, it was a conditional pass based on the cement cover to the septic system getting replaced. So that was like a, I don't know, $450 fix. Some towns have them witnessed, the inspections. Granby, this specific house was in Granby, so the septic tank install itself, when you do a replacement, is definitely witnessed by the Board of Health. But when Brian Pranka goes out, which is who I use as well, most towns do not have him need a witness. but in Granby, as an example, he cannot pass or fail any system. He basically goes, digs a hole, covers it with a blue tarp, waits for the town to come back the next day, and then they will give the final sign off. So it's a little bit more strict in some towns. And to Amber's point, it's a huge deal. You can't list a house with more bedrooms. So if you, for example, if that was you as a listing agent, you listed as a 4-bedroom, everything goes through and they find out it's a 3-bedroom, they're going to come back on the agent, I would assume, for misrepresenting that listing. And then the other thing I would say is don't just assume because the system was just replaced that it's going to pass again. So bought a house in Chicopee. I think it was an 80s build. She had it replaced in like, I don't know, the early 2000s because of this builder that was well known for putting in these bad systems. So she had it replaced. At that time in Chicopee, they allowed some kind of 1-day leach field design. I guess normally it's a 2-day design, but they did a 1-day design. They allowed it for a year and these failed. So I had a house with a, I don't know, 20-year-old leach field that failed again. So we had 3 basically systems installed for an 80s house. So just don't assume because it's plastic pipes that you're gonna pass. The other thing to keep in mind, right now, I feel like some sellers are putting their house on the market hoping they can get a number. And if they don't get that number, they might not sell. Keep in mind, if the septic system fails, you are required by the Board of Health to fix it within 2 years. So if you got someone that says, hey, I know I'm moving no matter what, then you might want to be proactive about having a listing where you know what the status of that septic system is. But if for some reason they're not like definitely moving, you could put your seller in a situation where they've got a failed septic system with the Board of Health, and now they have to go replace that. Whereas if they didn't test it, they probably would never have had an issue with their septic system. It just didn't pass the inspection for a transfer to a new buyer. So
Let's just continue on that thought. So I'm listing my house. I'm representing the seller, and it's got a septic system. Are we thinking it's best practice, if I know the person is moving, that we should be getting that septic and that Title V done up front so that we can present to the potential buyer that, hey, we've got a good system and we can address this up front versus middle of a transaction? I feel like it's similar to the pre-home inspections that we talked about. We get a buyer, all of a sudden septic fails in the middle of a transaction. Oh my God, I don't want this house. Where, that seller, yes, you got to address it up front. Yes, it's going to cost you some more money, but I think, hey, we just did this, it passed. What are your thoughts there?
So my personal thoughts is I would always have it done before the listing, because if it fails and you don't have the money to fix it, which is another conversation remind me to talk about, now you got a house that might only be financeable to 203K rehab loans or cash investors. That's a totally different buying pool than a conventional FHA loan, right? So I always want to know up front, unless it's a situation where they said, hey, we're trying to get this number. If we can't, we're not moving. The last thing I want to do is put my seller in a situation where they're getting letters from the Board of Health. And I do have a friend of mine who had his tested, and he bought it knowingly that it failed, and the town's forced, he's gone to court. It's a mess, but he knew what he was getting into because he got the house. So the other thing is, I know there's some loans. I know Key Bank was doing it. A lot of times when your house is listed on the market, and maybe this is a question for Friday's investor or lender call, when your house is on the market, a lot of lenders will not give you any financing because you're going to sell your house, and that's where you're a home equity line. So there was a home equity line specific with Key Bank that was for this exact reason. It was for septic systems or any major issues that you want to repair to help sell your house. So just keep that in mind. Even if your seller does not have money, if they've got some good credit, and they can go out and get one of these loans, they might be able to repair their system or replace their system prior to going on the market. And now they're opening themselves up to a larger buying pool than they would have listing their house with a failed septic.
And just want to clarify there, what you're saying with regards to that home equity line is, I haven't listed my house. I go to my bank, I try and get a home equity line. They give it, I'm thinking about selling. So I get the Title V done, it fails. right? I go to my bank, I can get my home equity line, I can fix it, and now I can put the property on the market with a brand new septic. If I had listed my house first and now I go to my bank and say I want a home equity line, that's where you're saying a lot of banks just aren't going to do that home equity line, and now I'm in trouble. I don't have the money to fix it.
Exactly, because
Yep,
just the fact that it's listed knocks you out from getting home equity line.
right. Chris, you've been patiently waiting. Let's get you on the horn. What do you got?
Not my face. Um, so the big thing of what Adam was just saying too is, so when they go out and they're going to do the Title V, if you are not clear if you're going on the market or not, he does not, he being Brian, does not have to file that with the town. And we had a long discussion about this, like whether that was legal or not legal. And in order to sell in Massachusetts, you have to have the passing Title V. If you're just paying him to do it for your information, he does not have to file it. So if you got to fail and you're not going to continue to sell it, he will ask, do you want me to file it? You know, in case it's something that they don't. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you think you're going to sell. I'm with Adam 100%. I always do it beforehand because you just want to know. I mean, it is a very crucial part for how you're going to price point this property. If you're pricing it with a brand new $30,000 septic system or a $2,000 fix, it's kind of going to be a different, even though somebody should be buying a house thinking they have a working septic system, sewer, you know. But say you go to do it and you do the Title V and it passes, but then you're like, you know what? I'm not going to sell yet. I'm going to wait till the spring. A Title V is good for 2 years. And if you pump once within those 2 years, it's good for 3 years. So that's something else to know.
Yeah, that's interesting on the filing. That's a great point and something really important for your sellers to understand and know about. So I appreciate you sharing that. That was great. Other than it just kind of popped into my head with regards to the septic and the sewer, we had a situation, and this is why you guys should be verifying with your clients before you list your house whether it is definitely on sewer or not. We had a situation where we listed a house. The street is on sewer. This seller thought they were on sewer. I think maybe even public record might have even had sewer. And so our agent listed it with sewer. It turns out they were on a septic system. The sewer, their house was at the end of the street. The sewer did not extend that far. So when the street was initially built, it had sewer, but it only went to, let's say, house 10. And now the street has 15 houses on it. And those last 5 houses didn't hook up to the sewer. So they were all put on a septic system. Right. So you really have got to, you really should get a copy of a bill, see if they're getting charged for water and for sewer, to verify with your clients when they are listing when you're listing these properties. Who else just wants to comment? Maybe you've seen a scenario or just be a good share for the group regarding septic, sewer, anything along these lines. Anything else coming up? Adam, go ahead.
Hey, just one last thing here. Sometimes you might see properties listed with what's called a tight tank versus a septic. So a septic system has a leach field. So basically liquids and solids go in, solids settle to the bottom, liquids rise up, go out into the leach field. There are certain situations where you cannot put a septic system in. That's always the number one course, but they require you to do a tight tank. And my buddy's going through this at a lake house of his up in Beckett. But long story short, tight tank, just so you know, is just literally a giant tank in the ground. So it's like a septic system without the leach field. Now it presents a couple things you should know. One is it needs to be pumped more often because it's holding liquids and solids. The liquids don't have a chance to drain. What better topic than talking about poop in the morning? Anyways, the second thing is a lot of banks don't love these. So a lot of times the house will get classified as a second home or a non-seasonal home. And that brings up a whole nother slew of items. So if you are showing someone a house and it has a tight tank, maybe it's up in like the Congamon area or something, where it is a second home and your people are planning on buying it for a first home, you just might want to double check with the lender that having a tight tank is not going to be an issue, because it's not preferred. I don't know if Lori Hogan's on the call. I know she had one years ago. I don't know what ended up happening with it, but just keep that in mind.
I was going to say the same thing. Lori Hogan had one and it was in Palmer. It wasn't even on a lake. It was some town like that where the houses were house, 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 and there was just no room. But I was going to say the same thing.
I'm going to just switch over. I think, Lauren, you were next.
So I grew up in a house that had a tight tank. We did live on a lake, right? So we had that tight tank, and we didn't know anything about anything when we moved in there. No loan, so it didn't really do much. Had purchased this house in cash. And I remember the first time the alarm went off in the house that the tight tank was full, and no clue what this thing was. And so yes, we ended up, figuring it out. And it was like a septic type system, a company that came and actually had to pump the tank every couple of months. So it's definitely different.
Yeah, I don't know how this happened. I'm actually showing a house on a lake with a tight tank, and the alarm went off during the showing. So, and my clients didn't use the facilities while we were there, and I had no idea. I'm in the same situation. No, it's just middle of the day on a weekday, and the alarm is going off. We're thinking it's like a smoke or fire, and I don't think we ever figured it out. We just like left, got outside, called the listing agent, and then they had explained it. So you just never know what you're going to run into on a showing. Amber.
So there is one other kind of septic system, which is a cesspool, which is similar to a tight tank, except it's more of a concrete structure where the fluid does leach out into the ground. And again, usually found at lake houses. I just looked at one cesspool. It just failed. But the quote for the tight tank, because you would think, you're just putting a tank in the ground, right? Was almost about the same price as a septic. They told he got a quote of over $30,000 for a tight tank. So I thought that was interesting. And we look at a lot of lake properties, and it's kind of scary to think like, 0.1 acre, where else are you going to put a septic? If it has a true septic, where are you going to put it? And the only choice is doing something like a tight tank, which means more maintenance.
So have you done a deal? Because I've never done a transaction with a cesspool as, like a passing one or something. I don't know. Has anybody done, like, have you done a deal? Has anybody closed a deal with a cesspool? I'm just curious. Does it need to, is it still like a Title V needs to be done to like pass it, or is that specific to septic? Does anybody know? Anybody clarify that? All right, maybe I can, let me do a little bit of research on that and see if I can get back to you guys. Because I've never done one with that.
I would just call Pranka, Steve.
Yeah, we'll get
See if
some
he
answers.
inspects them and whether it's due to the town. Yeah.
Lauren, your hand's still up because you got something to share, or just lagging?
Sorry, still just up.
Chris, go ahead.
My other thing was that if you are in the middle of a transaction and the septic has failed and you say it's going to be done before closing, you're going to get a new septic system. And then you go through all the routes, like Adam said, because it's kind of a big deal. You have to get the engineer out there, then they draw the plan up, and then they come in. If it changes to a raised system, sometimes they can't do another leach field because there's not a spot. So they have to do a raised system. That's a big deal for a buyer to know, because that's going to be a mound. It could be in the middle of your backyard. It could be on the side of your yard. It could be somewhere, but it literally looks like it's raised, just like it says, right? That's when you see the pipe coming out of the ground. A lot of times that's a raised system. And I have had it before in Southwick on sheep pasture, where it had to go from a flat system to a raised system, and it went from the buyer wanting to buy to the buyer not wanting to buy. So that's another thing. Like, if you're going to have a new system put in, and you have the buyer, you're going to want to know what that system looks like, where it's going to be.
It's a great point. I had a deal fall apart with a raised system. Same exact thing. We're going along, fails, can't just put a new one in the yard, have to go raised. Buyer was, it would have been literally you walk out your back door, and it was probably going to be on this one like a 5-foot mound. Like some of these mounds are not that bad. I've seen, like a 1-foot. 2-foot. This thing was going to be based on the lot was going to be like 5 feet up. And I've actually showed a couple of houses where it's got that big embankment in the back. And yeah, it's not ideal. We got a few minutes left. Anybody else with a share around septic, sewer, cesspool inspections? All right. Lauren.
Yeah, I just want to make note. I know we've said the word certificate of compliance here a few times already. And I know that for new agents going through first transactions, they hear and they learn that we have to have a passing Title V. And they think that, once they get this, there's something else that they need. But after it's inspected, after whatever is remediated, you get that certificate of compliance. You don't get like a full passing, and that is what can be used to close the transaction.
Good. And the conditional pass too, I believe, and I don't know if it depends on the type of conditional pass. Maybe somebody can clarify in this, but we can sell a house with a conditional pass, I believe. Can anybody confirm that? You can get a conditional, depending on what the condition is, we can move forward with the sale?
Nope, you still need the certificate of compliance with a conditional pass.
So you can have conditional, and then there's still a compliance letter that tags alongside of that.
Yep, because you have to make sure the condition is done. Like I had one just a couple of months ago up in Huntington. It was literally, like Adam had said, a little cap had to be put on something. So it was a conditional, but we still needed them to go look, re-inspect, and give a certificate of compliance for a
Okay, I see
stupid
what you're
cap.
saying. So Title V happens, it passes, it fails, or it gets a conditional pass. And then depending on if it passes, obviously you're going to get your Title V. If it fails, you got to fix whatever the issue is. And on the conditional pass, the town has still got to come out, issue that certificate, or say, hey, no, we want that fixed prior to us giving the certificate.
It could be town dependent, but
Yep.
in my experience, I don't know if anyone's had one where it's different.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on this topic? No other thoughts around septic, sewer, cesspool? All right. So we will finish up here like we always do. Let me just share my screen and let you guys know what the available training options are for today. We have the investor agent playbook. We have the long-term nurture playbook, the new agent starter series, real agents. Oh, and that, I'm sorry. Jesus, look at the dates, Steve. Just the 2 trainings today, the investor agent playbook and the long-term nurture playbook. So, take a class, learn something, come back to this call and share with us. Appreciate you guys as always. I appreciate the tech switch today. Hopefully it wasn't too glitchy for you. Have yourselves an awesome Wednesday. We'll come back and do it again tomorrow morning.
Steve.
Take care. Yeah.
Steve, there
Yeah.
is the 10:30 Connecticut call for Connecticut agents too.
Okay.
So
10:30
Wednesday,
CT
10:30.
broker call. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Take care, guys.